cons, and then I'll come back around and kind of close this up. But I think it's important to note the process that we took. In front of you, you should have a document that starts with a cover letter, and then after that is the executive report that comes after that. So let me tell you a little bit about why I sponsored and dropped House Bill 626. For at least a decade, if not more, there may be Forsyth County needs a second city, and I stress maybe. The idea was every time there was an issue regarding things that were occurring in the south end of the county, it was something that there was a desire to have greater representation. So in order to facilitate, I would say, almost public debate and scrutiny, and also be able to unveil facts, unveil ideas around this particular bill, what we did was I dropped the bill with three things in mind, and I refer you to the front page of the letter. The first one was, I had three reasons to drop it. The first was to rip the Band-Aid off. It was important to me that for once and for all, Forsyth County either moved on as a, quote, one city county, or it moved on with a second city, or maybe even more after that. But ultimately, it was critical that we moved on. The second one was, by dropping this bill, it allowed us to create a study committee. After dropping the bill, I went to the 7 members of the Forsyth delegation, and I also went to the 5 members of the Board of Commissioners and said, please appoint someone from your district to serve on this committee. And I'm proud to say 2 of the members are here today, and Eric Bennett and Chris Pike, if you could just stand up, please. Thank you, Eric. And Chris Pike, thank you. The interesting thing about the committee is this. 9 members were from outside the proposed city limits and 3 from inside. So you can imagine there was, let's just say, a myriad of opinions coming into the initial meeting. You will note that after the initial meeting, there were a series of public meetings that were held, and that's basically on page 4, starting with committee meetings all the way through page 5, and then also into page 6. The committee at the first meeting asked for a series of things. We want to see a myriad of documents. We want to see documents from the county level, the state level. They also told me who were the, quote, experts that they wanted to speak with. Lost experts, SPLOST experts, current city managers, county managers, you name it. They wanted to educate themselves on what's worked, what hasn't worked, and what are some of the pitfalls of basically incorporating. I can tell you that the committee came out, I'll start at the very end, the last chapter. At the very end, the decision was to permit HB 2626 to go forward through this legislative process, hoping for a referendum in May of 2018. At the end of the day, the committee wasn't saying they favored the city, they weren't saying they believed in the city, but what they were saying was they believed in the right to self-determination. But we still go back to that first one, rip the Band-Aid off. In order to rip the Band-Aid off, the idea was 5149 doesn't rip the Band-Aid off. All it does is cause more of these meetings. People saying the people weren't heard. That's not really what we wanted. So the committee worked hard to come up with a number that effectively created a mandate. We investigated states that for constitutional amendment changes required a supermajority vote. It turns out that 5 out of the 50 do require a supermajority vote to change the state constitution. 1, 55%, 3, 60%, and 1, 66%. The committee, if you read the report, you'll see, came out 6 and 6, 55 and 60. So I wish I could tell you there was a miracle on how we got to 57.5, but all it was just simple compromise. But ultimately, I believe that that mandate or that supermajority vote does create a nice spread in terms of 16, 17, 18, even 20 points to basically create a mandate for the creation of a city if in fact it gets to referendum and passes. So ultimately, my charter was, when I first had the meeting with the committee in May, I promised them one thing, and that was that we were not going to make this a kangaroo court. It was going to be taken very seriously, and whatever recommendation they provided, may it be move forward or not move forward, that I would take it and soldier it through, or I would take it and pull it out if that was a recommendation. In this case, it was to bring it through the legislative process and hopefully end in a referendum to provide the citizens of South Forsyth County the opportunity to do this vote. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, are there any questions from members of the committee for number 20?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Jones, I just want to say that I've seen a lot of these presentations about bringing cities forward, and from what I can tell, yours is very well organized, and I'll give you some credit for that, but I bet you had help too, so congratulations is all I'm saying to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Representative Oliver.
I want to echo that. I'm very impressed. You had a process that looked like it was trying to draw a grassroots analysis. And forgive me, I may have missed it, but have you done a feasibility study? I can't find it in the materials.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I didn't print it out. I'm happy to supply that for you. The first page of your infographic, if you have this 2-pager, it does carve out, obviously, a very small piece of that feasibility report. Do you have that?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. But I'm absolutely happy to provide you with the full report and the executive summary.
I just wanted to make sure it had been done.
Yeah, yes, it has.
Anything else, Representative Oliver?
Right. Chairman Brockway, I would like to note something, and I apologize in my opening comments, I didn't say it. The great news is that we all serve, but we also serve sometimes in a very hectic way, and in this case, a oversight was made, and that oversight I own. It's me. It's not the committee. It's my oversight. The committee discussed city limits or proposed city limits that actually, sorry to be so detailed, but if you look at the map, it was not supposed to go all the way across from McGinnis, all the way, McGinnis Ferry to 400. It was actually supposed to take a right turn at McFarland. And I can show the committee that if you like, and my request would be that there would be a possibility for a change to be able to allow this to continue.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Now that Chairman Reinders is here, and his expert mind, we'll tackle that issue here in a moment. But one of the things I did want to ask you, Representative, this committee has dealt with a lot of city measures over in the 8 years that I've been here. It seems like every year we've got a new city being proposed, and so in light of that, we've learned some things. And Chairman Reinders incorporated into our committee rules this year that among the information that we get from folks who are bringing a city forward is, of course, the feasibility study, which you referenced. But also, I'd like for you to talk about what services this city intends to provide and describe that, and who's going to deliver those services, what plans have been discussed with your group about how you're going to stand those services up, and if you would talk about that for a moment, please, sir.
Yeah, of course, and I would like to, even though it sits in the bill, I would like to refer you in the infographic to the upper left-hand corner of the first page. The initial 3 services are planning and zoning, code enforcement, and solid waste. In terms of standing those up, the bill itself was modified with the bill version that you have right now to have a strong city manager model. So the expectation would be, in lay terms or in business terms, is the city manager would act in many ways like the CEO of an organization, and the CEO obviously would be responsible for facilitating and initiating the planning, zoning, code enforcement, and solid waste. The mayor and the city council would act as the board, and we would expect during the transition period, which is built into the bill itself, and if the referendum was to be passed in May, would go all the way through December 31st, or until all of it was stood up. It does have a provision in the bill for that, to be able to articulate exactly the planning and zoning, the code enforcement, and then also obviously the solid waste management plan.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And one other question. Is built into your charter, is there the ability for the city council to start the process of offering additional services? Or are these the only 3 that Sharon Springs could ever offer?
It would be the former, Chairman Brockway.
Okay, all right, great. Any other questions from members of the committee? If not, we'll let Representative Jones step aside and we'll start taking public testimony. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Brown.
First on the list is Mike Dudgeon. Mike, yeah, come on up to the podium, sir.